Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zach Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait.
The Jets add another weapon to an offense, signing Dalvin Cook to a one-year deal, and they get one back with Breece Hall off the PUP list. But will it matter with an offensive line that still can't figure things out? Plus, we got joint practices to talk about, the Bucs, maybe a little bit of the Carolina one as well. Thanks for checking out the Can't Wait podcast. Tim McMaster here, along with our Jets reporter at The Athletic, Zack Rosenblatt, and special guest, former co-host of the program, Connor Hughes is back. Daddy Connor is back. Yeah. I was going to bring up a picture, actually. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. You can see Connor, or if you're joining us, the audio, primetime edition tonight. But I was going to find a picture of Brooke and maybe throw her on the screen. But then I realized that anyone who's watching this probably follows you on social media, and they've already seen her at the bar, at the golf course. Yeah. So
it's been amazing, man.
Yeah, how's it going, man?
Fatherhood thing, dude, it's been great. I miss you guys. I know it's kind of like I said, it's been crazy not talking to you obviously every single day. I think that's probably better for you guys though, that I'm not blowing up your phones 35 million times a day to talk about random stuff. I'm sure Zach is much better with that but much more better at valuing your personal time than I certainly am. But yeah, I miss you guys. I miss, like I just said, even just coming on to the Can't Wait listeners again. I miss you guys. I miss everything about it. But obviously, you guys have continued the show, and Zach's done a killer job replacing me. So, as much as that pains me to say.
All right, you get your compliment out of the way now. That's nice.
Oh, and now the daggers are coming. Yeah, now the daggers are coming.
Before we get to the Jets, though, seriously, you're sitting there. You have a beverage in your hand. You're not currently changing a diaper. It seems like it's all going well.
Dude, everything's been great. I think the one thing that I do feel a little bit bad about is Bree's breastfeeding, which is good for me because she's the source of food, not me. So when it comes to these late night feedings and stuff like that, I'm sleeping. Everyone always asks me, I feel so shitty because everyone says you guys are the times now. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I know when we were just straight up The Athletic, I could curse and stuff on the podcast. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that.
They haven't noticed yet. Yeah,
I'm going to get the FCC called on you guys on the first episode back. That'll be fun. So obviously Bree's breastfeeding. So in the middle of the night, for the first couple of nights I was waking up and then she was like, "You're literally just staring at me. Just sleep through the night." So when everyone asks, "Oh, how are you guys sleeping?" I'm great. I'm still getting my same 8 hours. It's Bree who's been busting her ass and grinding, obviously running point there. But I try to pick up the slack. But I think Tim, you obviously know, and Zach, you'll know in short order what this is like. It really
short order.
Yeah.
What are you trying to
breaking news? Zach is
are you telling me that I'm pregnant? What is going on?
Yeah. Surprise. Yeah. No. Short order, long order. I don't know what you guys have in store, but I don't know if Zach is as open on his personal life as I was on the podcast.
I've mentioned I have a girlfriend, so
yes, that's all they know. That is good. It's a stunning development there. But like I said, dude, I have no complaints. It's been incredible. It's been amazing. She's downstairs with my sister and wife and brother-in-law now, and she's cooing now, which is crazy, the new cooing and giggling, and it's oh my god,
it can't be that hard for you when you're going to Detroit for a week.
No, well, dude, yeah, it was dude. I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be great. I'll be sleeping in a hotel. This will be kind of chance to relax. I'm gonna play golf again for the first time in a while. I had to get a golf reference in the show for all the old time listeners who are not going to blow up the comment section saying what the hell. But I'll be honest with you, dude. First day there, second day there, I'm yeah, I miss her because you underestimate. And Tim, it's every time during the day you just go in there and give her a kiss or just say hello or and then go back to working. But then you take a break and you go and say hi. It's you underestimate how much you do that until she's not there to do that too, and it changes you, man. It really does.
Yeah, it's hard to be away. Yeah, it's the first time 100%. I feel in life. Yeah. All right. Well, you're limited time, Connor, so we should actually get to the Jets.
Yeah, Connor's bailing on us early like a loser.
I'll give you a little more time.
So the big news, obviously, is the running back situation. Let's start there. Jets signed Dalvin Cook up to $8.6 million. Breece Hall the next day comes off the PUP list. So here we go, the 1-2 punch, and we'll get to what it means for the other running backs. But first, Dalvin Cook, and Zach's going to get to go first most of the time here because he's still on the podcast. you look at the metrics and things like that, and there was the injury, but most people agree that in some way he took a little step back last year as far as the analytics. But 28 years old, just talk about exactly what this guy's going to add to the Jets, Zach.
With the decline part, it kind of go back to the same thing we said with Aaron Rodgers to a different degree, but Aaron Rodgers was on a decline last year, but Aaron Rodgers on decline is still significantly better than what the Jets had. Like, Breece Hall was very good before he got hurt, but the rest of the running backs the rest of the way last year were pretty much a disaster, other than that like 3-week stretch when Bam Knight played pretty well. So I think they're avoiding even having to deal with that. They're making it so, you're plugging every possible hole before it opens up. If Breece Hall's not ready to go, he'll play in week 1 probably, but if he's not like the same Breece Hall right away, they can ease him back into things. And, you have Dalvin Cook who, has run for 1,000 yards for 4 straight seasons. Jets haven't had that since Chris Ivory. So, he's still a really good running back. And honestly, this might be good for him in his career, which is probably why he was very willing to come to the Jets, because he's not going to have to be the bell cow anymore. He's going to be playing for a team that is its sights on the Super Bowl. And I think he's going to be pretty fresh, because I don't think he's going to be getting 30 carries a game. Once Breece Hall is playing at 100% or whatever that looks like, they're probably going to be close to a 50-50 split, if not Breece Hall getting more carries than him. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I was a little surprised by the money they gave him. I haven't seen like the full details of the contract yet. I didn't expect it to be up to $8 million. And I saw a report that it was $7 million in guarantees. So that was a little higher than I expected, but they're all in right now. Rodgers gave up some money, so they would go and get some players for them. And this is like the first, chip to fall.
It's not like I always crack up when people talk about the money, because like, it's not your money.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not my money. Yeah. Like, who gives a shit? Like, the Jets
they'll
have
get
money.
They'll get over it when he's not here anymore. Yeah.
I was going to say it was Aaron Rodgers' money until a few weeks
ago.
And
he gave it up. Like, bring him in. But like, look, if Jet fans think they're getting the I said this last night on SNY, like if the Jets think they're getting and Zach touched upon this a little bit, if they think they're getting the Dalvin Cook that ran for 1,000 yards every year since 2019 and the 4-time Pro Bowler and the guy who at one point was one of the top 3 to 5 best running backs in the entire NFL, they're not getting that. I mean, that's just not the case. This is a dude who's got a ton of touches. I think it's over 1,500, I think, total on his body between catches and rushes during his career. I mean, I know he's only 28 years old, but he is an old 28 years old because of that mileage. And so he's not going to be the same guy. You look at his GPS numbers from 2-3 years ago, and they're going to be significantly better than the GPS numbers he's going to put up with training camp with the Jets. But guess what? Like, the Jets don't need him to be the elite player that he was. If he's just a good football player still, or 80% of the Dalvin Cook who once was one of the best running backs in the NFL, that's fine for the Jets. Like, that's honestly fine. You're adding him. You're basically taking a good football player and adding him to a positional group into an offense that already has a ton of very good football players. I mean, they now have a 1-2 running back punch of Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. And Breece Hall is still the 1A. I mean, I was told last night after this signing, when I reached out and started touching to his base, this is still Breece Hall's show. Like, this is not – and the Jets made it very clear to Breece Hall yesterday once the signing became official. This is still his show. When he is ready to be 100%, he is going to be the bell cow of this Jets running back unit and of this Jets offense. But now you have another very, very good football player that you're adding to the mix. And Dalvin Cook, even in his current state, he's a lot better than Michael Carter. He's a lot better than Zonovan Knight. So if the Jets had the salary cap space to pay him and get him in here, why not do it? And the double bonus of this is that if he wasn't going to the Jets, he was going to the Miami Dolphins. Yeah. So now you also, it's addition by also subtracting from another team, because you keep him from your divisional rival. So look, this isn't something that's going to create some controversy, because Dalvin Cook knows he is not the 1A or alpha dog in that running back room. It's still Breece Hall, and you're just adding another player to the mix. You're adding someone else that can help this team win football games, which, again, if you're the Jets, you haven't won a lot of football games in recent years, so keep the good times coming. I mean, you have football players that want to play for the Jets. It's a good time to be the Jets, and why not just keep adding them? Like, that's the thing that cracks me up, is like, oh my God, they paid too much for him. They had the money to pay him. Like, they had it. So, okay, yeah, maybe they overpaid a little bit from what you think they maybe should have given running back who is still a free agent on August 14th. But also, who cares? Like, that money was just going to sit there. So give it to somebody else who's going to help you win football games. And Dalvin Cook is a good enough football player to still help you win football games.
All right, let's talk about the rest of the running back room, because you add Cook, but it's not like they were drastically short in there. It was a good
Mhm.
group with Hall back. Of course, we'll see how Hall is, how long it takes him to get back to being the star that he was a year ago. But you talk about Michael Carter, who you mentioned, Bam Knight, Izzy Abanikanda.
Well done
Now
with
if-
that name. I still don't know how to say it.
Yeah, I don't know if I got it right, but
Izzy, baby. That's all I say is
if
Izzy.
you say it fast, man, that's the key. Just say it fast. Is there a world where they could possibly keep all those guys, or is Carter or Knight, one of those two guys is going to be off this roster?
Yeah, I don't think it would be smart roster management to keep all of them. Like, the reality is running backs, even as much as they like Bam Knight and Michael Carter, they're kind of a dime a dozen these days, and that's why there's all this running back value stuff going on. And you can find a Michael Carter and you can find a Bam Knight around the league, I think, less than you can find a Dalvin Cook or a Breece Hall. So, I am interested to see who they keep between Michael Carter and Bam Knight. I did find it somewhat interesting that when they were talking about the running back room today, like Salah and I guess Salah, he only mentioned Carter when he was talking about like the group.
Yeah.
So he kind of like has some tell sometimes and stuff like that. Like, whoever's on his mind, kind of where he's at. It wouldn't shock me if Michael Carter was the one that was cut, but if I was predicting like right this minute, I think he'd probably be on the team. They do love him in that locker room. I think Bam Knight is more dynamic. It's probably a better like overall running back, but your third running back, they're close enough. Maybe you lean towards the guy that everybody loves. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely between the two. I mean, the competition now, and it's definitely been cranked up quite a bit, is between Knight and Carter. I mean, they're going to keep one and they're going to let the other one go. Probably try to get that guy to their practice squad, but
Yeah.
I think Carter might be a little harder to get to the practice squad than Knight, in my opinion. I think that's probably the case. But overall, man, like this is a good problem for the Jets to have. I mean, it really is. You have a legitimate number one running back in Hall. You have arguably the best now 1-2 punch because Kareem Hunt is gone from Cleveland. You probably have the greatest or best 1-2 punch in the NFL right now in going from Hall to Cook. And now the problem is just that you've got Izzy, who's guaranteed a roster spot because of his draft status. If you keep Bawden, that's another quote-unquote back that's in the mix, which then how many can you keep? Because I was originally thinking if they're going to keep Bawden as your fullback, they're probably only going to keep 3 running backs. So it was going to be Hall, either Carter or Knight, and then Izzy. Now you add Cook to the mix, and it suddenly becomes, wait a minute, who actually are you going to keep? So it's going to probably result in them losing a receiver. Now, obviously, we've seen Brownlee come way back down to earth at receiver from what he was doing early in camp. So I don't think there's really any chance of him making the 53-man roster right now. So you can probably keep maybe 5 wideouts. I don't necessarily know if anybody's going to sign Tim Boyle to their 53-man roster. So I think there's probably a good chance that the Jets could keep 2 quarterbacks and get him on their practice squad and something along those lines and still keep Aaron Rodgers happy with having him in the locker room, similar to what the Giants did with Davis Webb last year when they kind of kept him from the coaching ranks to keep him on the roster. But I think that final running back spot, it's impossible to keep more than 4. And if you consider those 3 are the guaranteed roster spots, that means it's Knight and Carter competing for that final spot.
All right, let's switch things up a little bit to who's going to be blocking for not just those running backs, but Aaron Rodgers, because, I mean, you can tell it's become the only thing I feel like Jets fans are thinking about in any way negatively about this team, right? Everything's rosy except if you bring up offensive tackle. It's even in the chat already. Half the questions that have come into the chat
it's nonstop,
are about this offensive line. So let's get right into it. And the bad news today, we'll start there. Elijah Vera Tucker injured. Doesn't seem serious, but it's an ankle. Zach, let's start there. As you look at this line right now with who's healthy, he's the most talented guy on it. And now he's going to be missing some time.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate he was out anyway, but I was really curious to see, because now there's been all this hubbub about the idea of him moving to tackle. And I was very curious to see if they would throw him out there and start to give him some reps there to really put some, where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing there. Because, I was skeptical initially that it would be a thing they would consider, mainly just because he hasn't taken a single rep there. But there still is enough time between now and the season, and the tackles have been bad enough. And if you kind of have to decide, is the best 5 include AVT at right tackle and Wes Schweitzer at right guard, or does the best 5 have AVT at right guard and Billy Turner at right tackle? So you basically are picking between Billy Turner, Max Mitchell, and Wes Schweitzer right now, I would say, unless they trust Connor McGovern or Joe Tippmann enough at right guard, I guess. then it's convoluted, and this is not the point is they haven't figured out their best 5, and that they keep talking about. Saleh had said he wanted to know his 5 this week, or after the Panthers week, and today it sounds like they're more confused about where they're at. Joe Tittman got his first team snaps at center today that he's gotten all of training camp. Mekhi Becton, when Max Mitchell went out, got his first reps at left tackle. Like, it just, there's so many moving parts. Wes Schweitzer was at guard. He's been practicing at center most of camp. Like, they haven't had 5 guys play every snap together for more than like 2 practices in a row. And Dwayne Brown's not even back yet. Like, there's just so much up in the air. And it's kind of feels like it did in the middle of last season when everybody was getting hurt and they were losing everybody. And they're kind of, mixing and matching and trying to figure things out. And it was a disaster. And it's kind of, and I get why fans are freaking out, because this is exactly what the problem has been. They don't have a solution. And it seems like the offensive line has not gotten better. And it's a legit concern. I'm not ready to panic yet. I think once Dwayne Brown comes back, it'll look a little better. I just think they need to decide where Elijah Vera Tucker is playing, and that kind of like dictates everything else.
The problem with Dwayne Brown is that I almost compare it to the Mets. Like when they originally signed Max Scherzer, it was a luxury, right? They already had a good rotation, that they believe could help them compete for a World Series. And you just added Max Scherzer to the rotation. Yeah, he was older. Yeah, he might have been on the decline, but it didn't matter because he was a luxury. Like, you were just adding him to an already good group. That was kind of the situation last year with Dwayne Brown when they were originally bringing him in to visit and things like that. Now, suddenly, like Zach just said, it seems like the Jets are relying on him. Just like this year where the Mets were suddenly relying on Scherzer. They needed him to be the dominant pitcher that he has been for so many years. And when he wasn't, the team fell apart. Same thing with Verlander. So I almost look at, that's my big worry, is that you're relying on a guy who's 38, 39 years old, had a shoulder injury last year. Father time catches up for everyone. And there's only so many hits a body can take before it starts to break down. And if you need him to be a legitimate, still borderline Pro Bowl, at least above average to very, very good offensive tackle in order to have success and play 17 games just in the regular season before you even consider going into the playoffs and playing divisional round, conference, and then a Super Bowl, that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy. And we already have concerns, whether it's Max Mitchell or Billy Turner right side. There's still a lot of concerns at that right tackle position. And I know a lot of people keep asking about Mekhi Becton. He has not taken a single rep, first team, second team, third team, fourth team, at right tackle. Because from my understanding, there's people within his team and his people that obviously that story that came out in Newsday, he believes that playing right side puts too much strain on his injured knee, which is going to lead to injury, which is probably why, while there is a competition at right tackle, not left tackle, Mekhi has played every single snap so far at left tackle. Now, when Dwayne Brown comes back, he's the left tackle. Mekhi Becton's not starting at left tackle. That's not even a position that's open. It's Dwayne Brown's job. The competition's over at right side, and Mekhi hasn't taken a single rep over there once. So he's not in that competition. It's between Max Mitchell, it's between Billy Turner, or it's between the wild card that the Jets have to play, and that's Elijah Vera Tucker. It's taking arguably their best guard, who they believe has all-pro potential at that position, and kicking him outside where he can play right tackle at a good level, it's potentially very good level. Does that solidify the offensive line? The ball dropping of this offseason, I genuinely do believe, was not addressing this offensive line more. And I know the Jets have come out and said that, we were never considering an offensive tackle in the first round because we didn't think, we were going to go Will McDonald. I think that's hogwash, because you're looking at the current state of this team and you look at the one thing that could potentially keep them from legitimately competing with the Bengals and the Bills and the Chiefs for the top tier spot in this conference. It's their offensive line. Interior, I think they will be fine with Lakin and either McGovern or Tittman, who's obviously rising up the charts, and Vera Tucker guard. Interior of the line, they're fine. It's that offensive tackle spot that is such a massive question mark and giant concern, because, again, you are relying so heavily on Dwayne Brown. You still have concerns at right tackle. And if something happens to Dwayne Brown, because this guy is almost 40 years old, suddenly you have 2 massive concerns and 2 massive questions at arguably the 2 most important positions on the offensive line, and there is no reinforcement coming. Good offensive tackles don't hit the waiver wire. Very seldom do good offensive tackles hit the trade block. So the Jets are kind of stuck with what they have, and right now it doesn't look like what they have is good enough. It really does not. I mean, I know this offensive or the defensive line for the Jets is so good and so great. I was not there in Carolina, but having read Zach's reports and having read Zach's tweets, as much as it pains me to say that, but then also doing my own digging within the Jets organization and talking to people over there, the offensive tackles were terrible against Carolina. Like, they were very, very, very bad against the Panthers. The Panthers are not some elite level team. So if you're struggling against Carolina, what's going to happen when Von Miller and the Bills come to town? What's going to happen when you see the Chiefs and that defensive line in the playoffs? What's going to happen when you see the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson? Isn't he on the Bengals now, or do you go? I can't remember if he went since the Bengals, or right? Isn't he on the Bengals?
Yeah,
Trey Hendrickson. Yeah.
Or he signed with someone else. I can't remember. I don't know.
I think it's. I'm going to double check this now. Ruining my rant. I'm clearly rusty.
I believe he's on the Bengals. Yeah. Bengals,
yeah, I was right. He went from Saints Bengals. I want to make sure I didn't have that reverse and went Bengals. What's going to happen when that happens? Like, when you face those teams. So we have these joint practices tomorrow. I really genuinely can't wait to see how this Jets offensive line in its current construction holds up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Shaq Barrett and all those guys that they have over there. I want to see how that looks, because, again, we can say, oh, the offensive line is struggling because the Jets defensive line is so great. And they are. The Jets defensive line is so great. But if they're struggling against the Panthers and then they're struggling against the Bucs, maybe they're also struggling because they just don't have enough up front at those two tackle positions. And that could be the one thing that derails this team, because, like you said, that's their only weak spot. They are set everywhere else. Defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, safety, tight end, running back, wide receiver, and they're deep. They have depth at those positions. They can withstand somebody going down. If Sauce goes down, DJ Reed becomes your number one. Brandon Echols is looking really good when he comes back from suspension. Safety, you have Adrian Amos who can step in. Tight end, you have Uzama and Rucker. Running back, you obviously have Cook. Quarterback, obviously, that's a different story. Wide receiver, as long as you don't lose Garrett Wilson, any of those other guys, there's a backup ready to go. Slot, Randall Cobb can step up. Corey Davis can go in from Lazard, or vice versa. You have the players everywhere else but the tackle position. That is the major, major concern that I have with this team right now.
All right, let's talk about Becton a little bit. We're actually getting got some negatives in the comments about us being an anti-Mekhi Becton podcast, which really couldn't be further from the.
I've said over and over, he's their most talented offensive lineman.
I know. We are. If anything, we're pro Becton. But all right, he played 27 snaps against the Panthers in the game. Was with the first team a little bit today. Granted, that was because Max Mitchell was out. But it seems like, Zach, there is progress being made there. Is there at least the idea that, like, all right, if the chances of Dwayne Brown playing 17 games is 0, right? Like, is there at least a hope now with what we're starting to see from Becton, getting more time in, playing with the first team a little bit, that if Brown misses 1 game, 2 games, needs a spell, Becton can at least be that?
Yeah, I think the word they keep saying with Mekhi Becton is trust, and Salah's using it in relation to, like, him trusting playing on his knee. I also think there's an aspect of the coaching staff feeling like they want to be able to trust him to go out there and actually, not only do his job, but able to play the entire 4 quarters. And I think that's been the biggest struggle so far. And I think that's why, both Connor and I think we left him off our 53, because a couple weeks ago, I was pretty convinced they were just going to trade him at some point. It's still possible. I don't know. I go back and forth on whether I think that'll actually happen. The talent is there, and he's shown that in the preseason. I think he's looked pretty good in those games that he's played. He gave up a sack against the Panthers. Other than that, he was good. When he gets through whole practice, he's looked pretty good. But the key is, as Salah has said, we need him to get through, all the game reps that we allot to him. And then on top of that, we need him to get through a week of practice, both before and after that. And he hasn't done both of those things yet. And he's made progress. Today, he had quite a few reps because he was, even after, so he went in for Max Mitchell with the first team, and then he stayed out there with the second team when Zack Wilson went out there. And so he's playing more. It seems like he's holding up pretty well, but you need him to get through the entire preseason. And at the end of the preseason, he needs to be able to play an entire game and practice all week, and then play another game and then practice all week. And I don't know that they are confident enough that he can do that. And that's why he hasn't really been in consideration for, a legit battle with Dwayne Brown. Even though Dwayne Brown's not even out there, they still haven't put Mekhi Becton with the first team on purpose. So, so ultimately, like, if Dwayne Brown goes down, do they put Mekhi in? I'm not 100% sure that they do right away. Like, I think
don't. Right
now it would be Max Mitchell or Billy Turner over him. And so I know fans every day.
This is definitely an anti-Mekhi Becton.
I think if he can stay healthy, then he absolutely should be a starting offensive lineman. Like, that's 100% true. But, and I get tweets from fans every day, and anytime we tweet about the offensive line, Mekhi Becton should be starting at left tackle or right tackle. He's not going to start at right tackle, as Connor ranted about earlier.
And it's not because I don't think he should. I'm just letting you know what the Jets are doing. Like, it's what we see every day.
Yeah. If they trusted him enough to do that, they would put him out there. And it's about, especially with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, like they're just not going to risk, putting a guy out there they don't think that can, survive a play, survive a series, survive a game, survive a season, all that stuff. So he still has a lot to prove, and it's a new coaching staff. It's a new offensive line coach who has a much different style of coaching than John Benton. Nathaniel Hackett, new offensive system. They need to have trust in him, and he needs a trust in his ability to last, because he's the one who pulled himself out of that Hall of Fame game. Like he felt his knee wasn't really doing well in the turf, and I think the coaches had planned to play him 20 snaps or whatever Saleh had said. So it's he's definitely made progress. 100% has made progress. I think he's actually been better than I expected in terms of like what we've seen him in team drills and stuff. But we need to see it for more than a couple days in a row.
Yeah, and I think that real quick, I'm going to try to be real quick. I mean, summoned by the family, but the thing that Zach hit on the head is that this is not anti-Mekhi Becton rant. I think Mekhi Becton should be out there. I'm telling you what we see. The guy has not gotten. They are rotating everybody in with the first team. Joe Tittman has gotten first team reps. Wes Schweitzer has gotten first team reps organically. Max Mitchell, Billy Turner are rotating at the offensive tackle spots at first team. Dwayne Brown, once he's ready, would get first-team reps. Mekhi Becton has not been given any first-team reps until today when Max Mitchell went down. And as soon as Max Mitchell was healthy again, Mekhi Becton came out. So it's clear. Like, read between the lines. When the coaches aren't giving him any first-team reps, and we're now, a month plus into camp, it's very clear that he's not in consideration for the job. And is that the right call? Is that the wrong call? It all comes down to trust. I think what the Jets are most worried about is they're not worried about the talent. They're worried about him staying healthy, but even more so than that, think about Mekhi's rookie year. He was healthy. He was out there. He took himself out of enough games where he missed a month's worth of snaps. I know he played in, 15 of 16 games or 14 of 16 games, something like that. But the number of snaps that he missed were a month's worth of snaps. And that is something that is still on their mind, that even if they give him this starting job, in the first sign of adversity, will he stay out there? Will he gut it out? Will he fight through it? And the first sign of adversity that he saw, and again, this is not my opinion, this is Jets. The first sign of adversity that he saw in the Hall of Fame game, where he's fighting for this job, where he wants to be considered for a starting job, he yanked himself out. So I think that's probably on their minds. But if you're looking at who's in consideration for the starting job, Mekhi Becton's not one of them, because again, all of these other players, Wes Schweitzer has gotten first team reps at both guard and center. Mekhi has not, intentionally been given any to compete for the job. He only went in because Max came out, and once Max was ready, Mekhi came back out, Max went back in.
All right, Connor, before you go, one comment for you from the chat. This is from Carlos Marquez Jr. Saw your set on SNY. I think it's time for a new chair. Treat the chair like the clubs.
Yeah, I said that actually to Breed, that this thing got cut up. It's Seamus, this is I got this chair not long. It's only 2 years old, but I think my desk, it just rubbed and it cut it up. So I do need a new chair. I need once the raise kicks in, I got to fight. My contract's up. So in another year.
Demand a better chair.
Fight for a raise, and the raise is going to go to a new chair.
You heard it here first. Connor's coming back to Can't Wait.
And all that stuff.
Yeah. Great stuff by Connor. Obviously, check him out on SNY. Obviously, the Jets. He also covers the Giants occasionally. So, if you care about that team. But thanks for coming on, Connor. Hopefully, it won't be as long before we get you back on again.
Don't give us any thumbs down just because he was here, guys, please.
Yeah, exactly. We only allowed a little golf chatter. See you, man. All right.
Now we can really have a conversation,
Now get your real comments about Connor in the chat as well. So everybody.
Yeah, tell us what you really feel about him
All
now.
right. So that's the O-line. That's the running back position. But let's get into the joint practices a little bit. And today's practice. Because a bad day for Aaron Rodgers, which we haven't said a lot of, for the most part, it's been fine. But the starters in general, rough day today. Start there, Zach. What was going on? What was the, in general, what were the problems?
It was kind of like everything. So I would say it starts with the offensive line. There was a lot of pressure, but there was a lot of moving pieces. So you almost understand it more today than most days, especially Max going out, Mekhi going in, Joe Tittman at center, and the Billy Turner and Max Mitchell in general. So the offensive line was bad. There was a bunch of drops. I think I counted like 3 drops, maybe 4 with the first team. And then Rodgers was not as accurate as he had been. It's nothing to be concerned about. Every offense has a really bad day in camp. Every quarterback has a bad day in camp. This is one of those. If it keeps happening, then you can be concerned about it, especially tomorrow when they go against the Bucs. That'll be like the real test of where this offense is at. And we'll get into the joint practice in a bit, but yeah, it was a bad day. I'm not concerned about it yet. I am concerned about the offensive line, as we've talked about. Not sounding the alarms, but I'm concerned. And then on the flip side, which I'm sure you're going to bring up, like it was interesting that the first team offense was as bad as it was because Zack Wilson had a really good day on the flip side of that. And he has progressively got better. So there's reason to be optimistic coming out of today's practice, I would say, beyond the Cook and Breece Hall and all that stuff. Like Zack Wilson showing progress is a good thing.
All right, let's talk about Zack, and let's go back to the Panthers game because the numbers on paper were real good for Zack. Three drives for points out of the 6 drives he was in there, played the whole first half, touchdown. 12 of his 14 completions to running backs and tight ends, which you can take 2 different ways, right? On one hand, you don't want 12 of your 14 completions to be to running backs and tight ends in general. That's not the way the NFL is successful on offense these days. You have to hit the wideouts. But when you think about Zack Wilson and a guy who has the biggest fault, right, has always been like, man, he can't do the easy stuff, right? Like he misses the running back out of the backfield. He misses the quick out. He misses this. He misses that. Because of that and because of his history with this team, I thought it was encouraging that he didn't take crazy chances.
Yeah.
I think he realizes he's the running back and that's not necessarily needed at this point. And there's that progress there where he was making the easy throws.
Yeah. I think that's, his progress is going to be in stages. Like he's not going to become what they need him to be as the number 2 overall pick right away, but they're starting from ground zero. The whole idea was that they were completely rebooting him. And so you're starting from scratch. And so, we're celebrating that he's throwing the layups when they're there because he wasn't doing that last year. So it's progress. And, he's doing things like, working through his progressions a little better. He's, when he's inaccurate, a lot of the throws haven't really been in a place where the defender can intercept it necessarily, which is progress. So you take progress ultimately. And I've been saying this a bunch, even on here, even as he's looked good in practice and even as he's looked okay in these first 2 games, like he's made progress. We need to see it for all of the preseason. I need to see. I'm not going to be able to give a full judgment on where I think Zack Wilson is at until I see him through the Buccaneers game this week, the Buccaneers practices, and the Giants game at the end of the preseason. Because, the practice was never really a concern for me. It's when the bullets are live and they're flying and the crowd's there and you're on national TV. Like, is he going to revert back to the form where he was a shell of a quarterback and he wasn't confident enough to make simple throws? And he admitted that, things got away from him. And is that guy going to come back when things are going poorly? Because that'll happen. And is he going to show enough that, in the worst case scenario that Rodgers has to miss a game or 2 or more? Do you feel okay about putting Zack Wilson out there? And I'm not near that stage yet. I'm really far from that, to be honest. But I have been encouraged, and I think he's definitely made progress from the start of camp. And that's all, we probably talked about at the beginning of camp. What we need to see was progress from him. He didn't need to be number 2 overall pick on day 1. He needed to be improvement from Zack Wilson, who got benched for Chris Streveler last year. So,
Streveler, we still got his name in. So what stood out today about Zack Wilson? Was it more of the same that we saw against the Panthers, or was it another step?
Yeah, it was that, and a little bit more. It was he made some throws, quick throws off the snap, which is something that Rodgers is an expert at, and I'm sure he's learned a lot from there. And he also made a nice throw down the field to Irv Charles. It was like the front corner in front of the end zone, tightly covered. He threw it into the only place where Irv Charles could get it. He caught it, and then the next play he threw a touchdown to Irv Charles. So, just doing his job, even in the face of some pressure with a backup offensive line, and you take it. Like I said, today I'm putting less stock into today than what I will tomorrow. He wasn't great against the Panthers D, I would say. So if he can show some improvement against the Buccaneers D tomorrow in their only joint practice, I I'll start to feel a lot better. And then Saturday when he goes against them in the game, that these two, this practice and that game, are going to be the two biggest tests so far, I think.
All right, so there's progress there. There's been more questions about the other injuries, so why don't we get into that a little bit here, including Carl Lawson.
Yeah.
Where is that at? How much concern is there around Lawson?
I mean, it was a day-to-day injury. This is back to the whole Salah injury timeline thing. They said it was minor, and maybe it is lower back injury. He hasn't practiced in, I think, a week and a half now. So if it keeps lingering, then I think it's fair to start worrying. And it kind of stinks for Carl because his Achilles had healed up and he was ready to go, and he's not out. And now everybody's seeing Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald kind of go off. So he's almost like the forgotten man all of a sudden. He didn't even travel to Carolina, I believe, and it makes sense if it's a back injury, because I don't know if it's good to travel with a back injury. As someone who has bad posture, I'm actually bending over badly right now. I have bad posture. My back is sore when I sit the wrong way for a while. So I imagine if he has an injured back and he's a much more fit man than I am, it's going to be hard for him to fly. So I don't know. I saw him on the sideline today. I don't know if the plan is we actually didn't get around to asking to him because we were distracted by all the other stuff that was going on, because there's 9 other things to talk about right now. But yeah, if it keeps lingering, I'll be concerned. They're acting like they're not concerned, but it's been longer than they said. So Garrett Wilson was back when Salah said he would be back, which was positive. He's a full go, but Carl Lawson's still gone. It does help that they do have all these defensive ends to where maybe you're not panicking if Carl Lawson has to miss time, but he's a very good player still. I think he's almost become underrated because everybody's seeing the flashy new things with Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, but I think Carl Lawson was in line for a big year too. So getting him back would be obviously very important.
It's just kind of crazy watching this defensive front and the pass rush get to it, though. You think to the Panthers game, the starters did not play, and there was just tons of pressure. They got to the quarterback. They're just so deep. I think once the season starts, it's just going to be kind of frightening. And the biggest question, right, will be, how do you use all these guys? Because now we're kind of seeing it. I think we saw it a lot more against the Panthers than we did in the Hall of Fame game. Just the crazy depth they have at pass rusher.
Yeah, this is another thing we've talked about a few different times. Like, training camp's always trying to figure out if a unit is as good as it looks, or if they're just going against a bad unit. And I think it's pretty clear that this unit is as good as it looks, because they dominated the first team Panthers O-line in the beginning, and then throughout the backups for the Panthers. Like, Jermaine Johnson had some plays where he used power to get through an offensive lineman, and he used his speed to get around them. And Will McDonald's speed is his game. Bryce Huff still has the fastest get off in the NFL. That trio, it's going to be fascinating to see how they use them, especially because they're talking about, the idea is they're going to have a lot of leads. And so when you have leads, you're going to be rushing the passer a lot. And I'm very curious to see how creative Jeff Ulbrich can get. Like, can he get Bryce Huff, Will McDonald, and Jermaine Johnson on the field at the same time and just go all out on trying to, I imagine they'll have some package of some. I haven't seen that, and I'm not reporting that's a thing or anything, but I'm fascinated to see if they can make that work, because those 3 guys together are scary. And then you add Quinnen Williams in the middle. And, if you have another pass rusher in there or whatever, you have somebody on the inside or whatever it looks like their pass rush is lethal. And, if everybody stays healthy, even if one person doesn't and everybody else does, at the end of the year, this is probably going to be a team it should be a team that puts up, top 1, 2, 3 sacks in Jets history. They have that ability. And Jermaine Johnson, I've been saying it all summer, I think he's in line for a really big year, especially if he starts taking snaps away from Carl Lawson. He looks like the guy that, as I believe Connor even reported leading, I wasn't covering the Jets yet, but that the Jets wanted to take him in the top 5, and then he was still there in the 20s and they got him. And I think he's showing why they believed in him so much. And again, it's the preseason. You try not to get too excited. Elijah Moore was a preseason star. Other guys have been preseason stars in the past, but Jermaine Johnson is one of the biggest reasons why I'm very high in this group, honestly.
All right, I'm just going through to get through some of the questions that we've had come up. And here's one to get back to the offensive line a little bit, because we touched on Tippmann playing today with the first team, getting his first team reps,
Yeah.
but we didn't really talk about how he looked in that situation. So we got this in from John Cosenza. Says, can you ask if McGovern could possibly be moved to guard with Tippmann starting at center if he gets to that level?
Yeah, I think that's one of the possibilities out there if you're trying to find the best five. That does impact your depth a little bit. Although I guess in theory, if something bad happened, you could move McGovern back to center and then start Schweitzer or something. But yeah, I think that's possible. I don't know how McGovern hasn't played guard or even practiced at guard, I believe, since even a couple years before he joined the Jets. So it's been a little bit. He does have experience, though. He's a veteran. Again, if it's the best five, I wonder if you'd rather Joe Tippmann at guard than him, especially because of his size. But the ability to play one of them at guard and the other at center is intriguing to me. I lean towards that not being what will happen, but it wouldn't shock me. And I think we'll know a little better once we see if AVT is only going to play right guard or if he starts practicing at right tackle. And then, I'll have a better read on that. But I think it ultimately comes down to, do you trust Connor McGovern, Joe Tippmann, or Russ Schweitzer more as your right guard? And whatever the answer is, would be the right guard.
It's going to be interesting. The one thing we didn't talk about in the offensive line, we kind of touched on a little bit, though. There's so many changes, and all you hear about in the NFL, right, is like having the same group practice together. It feels like, are they going to get one full week of practice with what they think is going to be the starting offensive line?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why it's been interesting to me that they're rotating these guys a lot. Hackett kind of explained that like we want them to do that because when the season comes and we want some fluidity, because if we need a guy to go to the other side, he has the ability to do that now. But you're also sacrificing the chemistry that this five kind of needs to play together at the same time. So I guess Dwayne Brown not being there, kind of, you don't have it anyway, so you might as well experiment, I guess. But actually, as Taylor Delgado pointed out, Joe Tippmann did take some reps at guard with the third team today. First time we've seen him do that. I'm curious to see if he gets more of those. That'll be something I'm watching. He is, I don't even think I mentioned this earlier. Saleh said that McGovern and Tippmann will be flip-flopping each day with the first team at center, which is different than when Tippmann wasn't playing at all with the first team. I don't know if that means that that's a legit competition now or not, but clearly they believe more in Tippmann now than they did before the Hall of Fame game. So Tippmann being a factor would be a boon for this offensive line, I think, because talent-wise, I think he's better than, or has the ability to be better than McGovern. So that'll be something to keep an eye on for sure. But they need to find the best five. They're going to keep saying it. And I think they're probably going to keep saying it until Dwayne Brown comes. They haven't really indicated if that's the case. But, it's there's not that much time left training camp wise. So I guess if anybody doesn't need all the reps, it'd be him. But they need him back soon so they can start making this group and decide who the five are.
All right. Anything we missed today from your personal rundown, Zach?
I did like Alex's special teams question because we do.
Okay. Actually.
Yeah, I saw you started. He said, "Can Zach talk about how much better their special teams will be this year with Morstead?" I should say, we haven't really talked about them because it hasn't been like a problem in training camp at all this year. And I kind of joked during the game on Saturday against the Panthers I was like, is Thomas Morstead the best player on the Jets? Because he's been like absolutely killing it in the preseason to the point where it's like, wow, that they let him go and kept Brady Mann all these years because he's punted inside the 20. His punts are all going over 50 yards. The placement's been great. And then on top of it, you have Greg Zuerlein, who seems like forgot how to miss field goals because he's just been like on the money. And it's been interesting. This is only my first year covering the Jets, but last year I wrote something about every year there was a kicker competition. And then throughout a year, they went through multiple kickers. It seems like, knock on wood, they finally found their guy at kicker. And it's kind of been interesting to see that special teams isn't as much of an issue. And I feel like McCole Hardman will probably be the main returner. Xavier Gipson has shown some flashes. I don't know if he's shown enough to like sneak onto the roster, but returner would be, if Hardman's healthy, he's like the best option there.
All right. It continues to be fun watching this team, and now Dalvin Cook.
Hard Knocks tonight in less than an hour.
Yeah, we were pregame, right, for Hard Knocks. So
exactly.
check that out. Dalvin Cook's not going to be joining the team for, I guess, about a week. He's still recovering from the shoulder a little bit, expecting a baby as well. So that will continue to come, and that'll be exciting news when he finally reports. But yeah, check out Hard Knocks tonight. We'll be back again next week. We came a little bit early this week because of the Dalvin Cook news. But we'll be back again next week. Check out all of Zach's great writing. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait. You can join right now. If you're a new subscriber for a year for $1.99 a month. He's got a great story. He's got a story about Cook and Breece Hall, how that's going to work together. And then another story on the offensive line and 5 possible paths to fixing the current problem. So tons of great content coming all the time. But thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to everybody next week on the Can't Wait podcast.